Again, oh my god, this video sucks. This video quality has got to be improved upon. I will work towards that next time. Okay, this is the first, I guess, in these installments. I know I made one in March and one fairly recently as a reintroduction. And I really don't care how the voice sounds. I know my voice is a work in progress. And anyhow, that's neither here nor there. What are we discussing? Well, we're discussing several things. First, let's go with a brief introduction. Hello to you. I'm Abigail. And many of you who know me know I'm transgender. And we'll have a discussion about that. Also, there are other things I have discussions about. First of all, let's cover the whole transgender thing. Because that is becoming a subject of controversy lately. It's sort of like everywhere I turn, um, it's like controversial. And you have people wanting to invalidate the existence of it. You have other people who want to redefine the definition and bring it back to some archaic notion that you have to be, a glorious actor who can portray the Jessica Rabbit look, as they used to say. And okay, yeah, it's sort of cool, I guess. I don't know. First of all, number one thing I want to say, please, no more Caitlyn Jenner. I support her transition. She is a transgender woman in her own respect, in her own life. Great. Now that we got that out of the way, though, honestly speaking, come on. The woman definitely does not speak for all of us. Far from it. Like a mile away, it couldn't be the furthest thing. I mean, I'm not trying to disrespect her. Like I said, I support her. But as far as opening her mouth in general comments that was supposed to be made in support of us all, she really failed. And the more I go along, the more I'm beginning to understand, because I never understood the breadth of my own existence and my own community, much less alone where Caitlyn Jenner's limited. For example, one thing I learned recently is that, well, for those who don't know it, another umbrella term used is natrois or natrois, whichever way you want to pronounce it. And it generally means that you're genderless. Now, I was aware of genderless existence for a while and sort of semi identified with it, but you know, when you're transgender, you have a compulsion to feel like you have to fit in one of these stringent boxes. Um, Especially by some members in the community at large, they really like to put down people who don't fit in those perfect boxes. And it wasn't until recently, watching a few very good videos on the subject, I'd like to recommend you go see um, Ashley Mardell's channel on it. She has a series called The ABCs of LGBTQ. It is awesome as a primer. Not just for orientation, but gender and a lot of things in between. That being said, um, from there I did more reading. Apparently, you can be both genderless and transgender. You can transgender into a genderless form and still have some form of characteristics. In other words, where one might feel forced to go ahead and transition into a trans woman or transition into a woman or whichever way you want to put it. Um, the reality is you can also be genderless and transition into a feminine genderless identity, which means you still get the feminine or woman type traits or woman-esque traits that you do with transitioning as a trans woman, but your genderless identity. So this may mean your pronouns, your emotional feelings over the subject, other things may be without gender or without that dimension of picking one side or the other or any. So yeah, it's quite complicated. But the short explanation is this: the traits of transitioning to for a trans woman are not necessarily bound to being a trans woman. So, for example, you can get vaginoplasty and still not be a trans woman. I know it takes a while to get used to, but it does make sense if you understand that biology is a social construct. Um, and the reason why you have biology or biological sex is a social construct. Biology is not. And the reason you have biological sex as a social construct is, again, it puts certain biology into boxes that then those people must conform to. In other words, your ovary, you have a pair of ovaries. You must be deemed a woman based on your potential to get pregnant, as this is, among other things, your primary function now, as determined by that role. So, yeah, very much a good example. But the reality is, like someone not necessarily identifying as a woman in order to have ovaries, so too the same with vagina or anything else. So someone transitioning to a feminine form, breast, vagina, and so forth, need not be a gendered identity, which is interesting because it sort of touches on the way I identify. I'm transgendered, and yes, I am definitely transgendering towards a feminine identity, but I never really felt compelled to the boxed, you're a woman in this tight box type identity. It's not to say I can't enjoy that expression, but it's never really defined me internally. So that I found quite compelling. And so when you bring into the larger scope of things like that into discussions where people feel pressured to have surgeries in order to be considered trans women, or they feel pressured to have um, name changes, or whatever the case may be, you're you're really getting into a lot, and it shouldn't be. I mean, gender identity is a personal option based on social constructs, and it should be treated respectfully as such. That is, are we all transgender compelled to transition? Relatively speaking, most of us are, but not all of us. But does that mean we have the right to box our transition or someone else's transition in our terms? And the answer is no. I mean, that's just it. And I think there's a lot of people you see complaining that they're getting boxed in too tight. And it's true. So I think what we need to do is take a step back here and say, well, listen, these are all social constructs. Um, I am A, B, and C, and I identify as that clearly, or at least I think I do for the time being, as I explore my identity. And we should let each person, individual, transition in their own way with their own set of correct, not preferred, correct pronouns, because each set of pronouns, he, she, um, they, she, sir, are basically correct for each individual person. There is no such thing as just a preference. That personal pronoun is correct for that person's identity, and that is significant. So, it seems a little anal, but it's true. But, yes, nice discussion. All right, so where were we? So yeah, I sort of forgot. It's been an interesting year. I've gone from beginning HRT last November to getting my name changed to having the orchiotomy, and then sometime early next year I'll be having the vaginoplasty. Um, and that's all great. And in the meantime, I'm getting a lot of I'm getting correctly gendered. That's exciting, actually. I think it's radical. But it's not only that, I'm not even getting ma'am, I'm getting missed. It's like miss. Wow, really? Oh my god. I mean, that's I could really see this going far. Um, and so yeah, it's been really really cool that way, and I'm enjoying it. And my hair's run somewhat longer. I'm still not sure what I want to do with this when I get it to a magic length. I don't know what a magic length is. Oh, um, yeah, and so okay, yeah. Let's start with some other introductory stuff. So I have been trans feminine all my life. It's nothing new. Um, there were times I cross dressed. Yes, but I mean, we all know that the dressing part of it is only a fragment. It, the the biggest part is our internal identity and who we feel we are and who we actually are and identify as inside. Oh, and now, cool. Um, well, first thing, we have two great revelations up in 2015. One is that, and this was revealed on the atheist trans woman trans men site, there is no such thing as a distinct man or woman brain. It's fluid. Oh my god. Wait, hasn't the whole idea of transgender been about fluidity to begin with? Didn't that like upset the whole um crowd of people that want gay to be gay and that was it? But there you go. And if that's radical enough, they actually found, they actually, well, I won't say they found, they had good research on gender dysphoria and gender identity to begin with. And basically, what they did was they took, I think one person in particular took a lot of the research and actually sifted through it and put together some good information from the Boston University of Medicine, I believe. I'll check that up later. Um, and lo and behold, what they found is there's actual biological, um, uh, let me see, there's actual biological reasoning behind gender identity and dysphoria. Meaning, we don't just, what we've been saying all along, we just don't go out and identify who we want to. There's a logic to it, and there's a biology to it. And they're finding after researching uh, the hypothalamus and certain gland functions, they're finding, oh yes, this is true. And so that's also interesting and in our favor. Two strikes for 2015. And I think it's only going to get better. The UN's taking interest in us. I'm not sure whether it's a full on though, or whether we're. Oh, that's the other thing. You know, there's been discussion about us being dropped from LGBTQ, and someone mentioned something interesting, and I think I can dig it. This may be an opportunity for us. I mean, LGB has basically been limited in its scope, and when represented us as a general one size fits all, according to their binary scope, which is what LG usually does. Um, but in doing so, they've committed what's called bi-erasure, which basically it erases the whole field of sexual orientation and gender variance all around and underneath. Um, and it's quite an interesting field. Because for example, you have sexuality and romanticism, and you have familialism, which if you're aromantic, then you're probably familial, which is how you have your right. And or familial, or there's another word for it. I can't think of it off the top of my head, but it is quite interesting, um, because, and this is delving into it, um, if you're even if you're, let's say, homosexual or bisexual, you can also be aromantic, or you can be heteroromantic. I mean, imagine that you're homosexual, you're in love with the same sex, or at least sexually attracted, but you're heteroromantic, which basically means you're romantically attracted to the different, which sounds weird at first, but they actually do usually operate in tandem, but they don't have to. They're completely different spheres. Um, so all this gets erased, and what this other person was saying, or at least alluding to, which I found interesting, is if we have the some of these general LG groups walk away from the table, we could actually start filling the seats with the diversity, which opens up a larger variant. But not only that, the one thing missing from the national conversation has been gender. And it's really the cornerstone of all these things. I mean, let's be honest. Um, it's the cornerstone of the LGBTQ. It's a cornerstone of feminism, and yet amongst them all, it's the least discussed topic, unless they're using it as some sort of weapon or principle to exclude or include. They really don't refer to it, and yet it should be, because if we had any hope of bringing these movements, and I mean all of them, to the pinnacle and raising everyone up to the point where we can really start to make progress, gender really has to be broken out of its myth and shown for the social construct it is. This includes um, gender expression, gender identity, and even biological sex. And so, if we start, let's say, for example, in New York's Pride agenda walked away from the table saying they accomplished all their main goals. Now, yes, that's awful. But if we take the opportunity to fill those seats and start making a primary subject of those discussions now, instead of sexuality, gender, and starting to deconstruct that, it may actually take off. And we may have a better chance. And here's why. In the case of sexual orientation, a minority of the people actually um, see it as important. They see it as something that has to be dealt with. In other words, people have to be free to love the way they do. We can oppress people, but they don't see it as a personal. However, gender in this case and gender liberation is essentially something everyone identifies with. I mean, feminists, for example, would have to be on the forefront of this. They have to want to deal with this on a major way. because this social construct binds them to age old myths and subjugation and oppression and prejudice. So, breaking this down finally for what it is, which is a social construct meant to um, obliterate the equity of a group of people in society, just denying them their equal rights. I mean, that is that goes a long way for them. And so I'm sure whether they all come on the same page or not, I'm sure they would all come to the table with their own contributions as to what, when, where, and how. Um, and then you have queers and pangenders and agenders and transgenders and genderless, and they would all also come to the table. And the discussion would get interesting very quickly for a number of nice reasons. And by opening up that discussion, we would further open the field for all of us. And yeah, right? I mean, could you imagine walking out and saying, yeah, I'm like, um, I got like a pangender, M to F thing going on here. And not have someone flinch an eye would definitely be awesome. If cisgender people and trans could just like walk down the street like no big different, great. And I think LGBT walking away from the table and leaving it open to a discussion about gender is perfect. I mean, it's ripe, and we could really take advantage of it. Yeah, that would be awesome. So, all right. But getting back to the thing of boxing, I think we gotta get off of this. Transgender means you're trans. It means you do not identify with the gender you were assigned at birth. And we all know that a lot of people like to call that biological sex, but we all know biological sex is a social construct. You have testicles, you're a man, therefore your primary function is slave work and dominance and war and, oh yeah, providing DNA for the next generation. You have ovaries, therefore you're a woman, therefore your job is the kitchen, therefore your job is this, therefore your job is da 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 da. So the actual fact that groups like men's rights advocates or TERFs, trans exclusionary radical feminists, actually defend these notions is absolutely insulting. There is no way you can defend them and make sense. A defense of notions like this defend ideas like rape culture and misogyny and patriarchy that hold down the greatest part of society and women in particular. Now, am I going to lose sleep over the fact they argue that way? No, because thankfully the majority of people who look at it and the majority of cisgendered women who look at it see it for what it is. And they don't buy into turf mythology or MRA mythology. They buy into the reality, thankfully. But it would be nice, at least for their own benefit, that they finally wake up and see what they're defending for real. Because it would help a lot. And a lot of recent events have been fueled by people like Heath. Heath, who is a gender non-conforming lesbian, who went down the avenue of trans manhood way too easily, is one of those stories, and there are a few of them that are quite unfortunate, and I wish it could have been easier for Heath. But the reality is, Heath's only downfall going that direction was hormones. And Heath says to disagree herself that those hormones didn't do completely irreparable damage, and she was able to walk away with what she wanted. So, all this backlash from her, I understand there were people in the trans that she might have had bad blood with, and I don't deny that. But you have no right to dictate to other women, men, cisgendered, transgendered, what they're supposed to feel based on your personal subjectiveness. I'm not saying that her or the people she represents don't have their own points. They do. And one of them is being the way certain parts of the trans community do box people in. And she felt boxed in, and I have no doubt. There were times I ran into these people. It happens. You got bigots and extremists and other jerks of different types wherever you go. And unfortunately, you especially have prejudice among the oppressed, and the reasons are difficult, but it sort of goes something like this. The oppressed feel the need to take out their, that's not even in big enough numbers to make a difference. So what am I saying? The bottom line is this. We gotta stop all this boxing and stuff and all these ridiculous arguments and start to focus on gender as it is. We can really, now that the LGBT part of this is beginning to walk away from the table, we can start to bring a real conversation of gender to the table. And that'll radically redefine what we've seen since. And God, I know this is over half an hour, and I'm putting people to sleep. But anyhow, so I guess, if you want to, there's a comment section. Write in it. And I guess I'll see you next time. Ciao.